On the afternoon of October the 28th of 2024, Brooklyn artist Sabina Rosas, who also went by the last name Coram Dell, was found dead in a studio of the Show Sugi Ban House, a luxury spa in the Hamptons. The previous day, she'd checked into the spa with 56-year-old Thomas Gannon, whom some sources identified as her boyfriend and benefactor, while others described him as her sugar daddy. The true nature of their relationship was unclear. Gannon took a ride-share from the spa early on October the 28th and traveled 220 miles to his home in Honesdale, Pennsylvania. After Rosas's body was discovered, the man was found dead at his residence from a gunshot wound to the head. Shortly before his death, he'd confessed to killing Rosas. In a message to a family member, the cause of the 33-year-old artist's death wasn't immediately revealed. According to Rosas's website, she was inspired by Pauline Oliveros' sonic meditations to develop a deep listening practice, leading her to create intuitive, closed-eye drawings, transcending analytical thought and channeling inner energy. Gannon had been her benefactor since 2021. They traveled together often and stayed at upscale hotels in New York and Pennsylvania, as well as at wellness retreats in other countries. Gannon, a flooring contractor, funded their trips, supported Rosas's art career, and paid for an apartment in her native Tajikistan. He was reportedly aware that she had other relationships, one of which was with fashion designer Ryder Iwata. In the aftermath of Rosas's death, the latter revealed that they'd been together since meeting at Purchase College in New York. In 2016, they were engaged, according to Iwata, but he believed that Gannon was not aware of that aspect. Discussing the other man's relationship with Rosas, the fashion designer claimed that his money became the control he would use to stay in her world and her orbit. Iwata, who'd only met Gannon once, described him as very possessive and very odd, noting that Rosas wasn't herself around him. Elizabeth Phillips, Rosas's mentor and former art professor at Purchase, urged her to apply for grants so that she wouldn't be so reliant on Gannon's financial support. Rosas reportedly told Phillips that she planned on breaking up with him. There was indication of further turbulence in the artist's life. In March of 2023, Rosas was arrested in Miami for battery and appeared with a black eye in her mugshot. The circumstances of her arrest, the progress of the case, and whether Gannon was involved remained unclear. The investigation into the murder was ongoing as of the latest updates. Number 8. Wayan Myrna Salihin. On the afternoon of January the 6th of 2016, Jessica Kumala Wongso reserved a table at Olivier Cafe at the Grand Indonesia shopping mall in Jakarta, Indonesia. The 27-year-old then did some shopping before she returned to the cafe at 4:14 p.m. and ordered drinks. Her best friend, Wayan Myrna Salihin, and another woman arrived to meet her about an hour later. Shortly after taking a sip of the Vietnamese iced coffee that Wongso had ordered for her, Salihin collapsed, began convulsing and foaming at the mouth. She was rushed to a local hospital and pronounced dead at 6:30 p.m. An autopsy found evidence of bleeding in her stomach, and strong traces of cyanide were allegedly discovered in the iced coffee that she drank. On January the 30th, Wongso was arrested for Salihin's murder. What followed became one of the most famous cases in the country's history. The live broadcasted trial lasted for 135 days and was a subject of national attention, covered extensively by Indonesian media. As Wongso waited for her friends at the cafe, she was seen arranging her shopping bags on the table, thus obstructing the surveillance camera's view of the drinks she'd ordered. Prosecutors argued that she then proceeded to spike Salihin's iced coffee with the cyanide. The motive, as presented in court, was anger and jealousy. Wongso was a former permanent resident of Australia, and Salihin had reportedly told her to break up with her Australian boyfriend. Salihin had gotten married weeks before her death, and Wongso wasn't invited to her wedding. A colleague of Wongso testified that she had two personalities. that she manipulated people for sympathy, and that she became enraged when she didn't get attention. Salahin's twin, Sandy, said that Wongso sent her news about poison in the wake of her sister's death in late October of 2016 in a verdict viewed live by millions of Indonesians. Wongso was found guilty of Salahin's murder. The iced coffee murderer, as the woman came to be known, was given a 20-year sentence. Her subsequent appeals were rejected. A 2023 Netflix true crime documentary titled Ice Cold Murder, Coffee and Jessica Wongso examined the case and trial, renewing conversations regarding the guilty verdict. In the aftermath, some believed that the woman was innocent, while others dismissed the documentary as sensationalistic, arguing that it lacked journalistic rigor. In August of 2024, after serving 8 years of her sentence, Wongso was paroled. The woman, then in her mid-30s, smiled as she addressed the media and thanked those who'd supported her, adding that she'd forgiven everyone who wronged her. Number 7. Haley Adams. In early November of 2023, English woman Cheyenne Loader and her best friend, 38-year-old Haley Adams, went on a 3-day binge during which they took a mixture of alcohol, amphetamines and crack cocaine. On the afternoon of November the 4th, Loader called her father and said, "Haley is on the floor and I don't know what's happened." The man placed an emergency call, after which police and paramedics went to the Devon address at around 5:30 p.m. 8 minutes later, Adams was pronounced dead. The woman had been savagely beaten by Loader, who had no recollection of the attack. She told the authorities, "I've done it. I know I've killed her. I don't know what happened. I woke up on top of her. We've been on crack cocaine for 3 days." Adams suffered extensive bruising to her head. A tuft of her hair had been yanked out by the roots, and she'd lost 6 teeth, 5 of which were found at the scene. Loader had inflicted the damage without any weapon by repeatedly punching, kicking, and stomping on Adams in a prolonged attack that was fueled by substance abuse. "What have I done? She's my best friend," the woman was reported to have said at the scene. She was initially arrested for murder, but the charge was dropped after it couldn't be definitively determined if the attack had caused Adams's death. The woman suffered from sarcoidosis, and in spite of her being brutally beaten, it couldn't be ruled out that her death could have solely occurred from a combination of her health condition and the drug binge. In April of 2024, a judge accepted 32-year-old Loader's guilty plea to causing grievous bodily harm, for which she was sentenced to 2 years and 6 months in prison. Number 6. Jane Miller. David and Jane Miller got married a few months after meeting on a cross-country flight in 1991. They moved to Sanford, a suburb of Orlando, Florida. Jane, who was at the time in her 30s, believed that her husband was a high-powered tax lawyer with political ties. He showered her with expensive gifts and took her on extravagant dates, as well as on a month-long summer vacation to Europe, claiming that it was funded by the government of Kuwait as part of his lobbying work. By the early fall of 1991, their relationship had fully broken down after Jane found out that David had been living a double life. He was already married to and had an ongoing relationship with his first wife, Dorothy, who lived in Pennsylvania. He'd married her in 1985 and convinced her that he did special government work and was connected with the CIA. David and Dorothy had previously lived in Orlando, but he asked the woman to move with her children back to her hometown of Belle Vernon, promising to follow them. However, after a 2-day visit to Florida in March of 1991, Dorothy never saw him again. By September of that year, the women had found out about each other and went through David's lies together. He was neither an attorney nor a spy and had kept his wives in the dark by telling them that he had to travel extensively for work. David was, however, a successful business owner and civic leader in California. The man ran a printing business in Granada Hills, was the president of the Granada Hills Chamber of Commerce, and the founder of the San Fernando Valley Leadership Foundation. Dorothy and Jane bonded over their shared betrayal, and the former later told a media outlet, "She was just another innocent person just like me. We had a compassion for each other." Both separately confronted David over his bigamy. On September the 15th of 1991, Jane went to remove her belongings from a storage unit they shared. She ran into David in the parking lot. They argued, and the man struck her in the face. When Jane got back to her car, David brandished a 9mm handgun and shot her multiple times through the driver's side and passenger's side windows. 33-year-old Jane died after 5 bullets hit her chest and head. 2 cab drivers, whom David had hired to help move his belongings, held him at the scene, and he was arrested. In court, the man tried to claim temporary insanity brought about by his business failing and his wife's discovering his double life. He was found guilty of Jane's murder, and in 1993, he was given a life sentence with a minimum of 25 years served. Number 5. Uthra Kumar. On March the 2nd of 2020, Indian mother of one Uthra Kumar was bitten by a Russell's viper at the home she shared with her husband Suraj in Adur, Kerala state. The bite left her bedridden, and she had to undergo plastic surgery to mend tissue damage caused by the powerful venom. While recovering, she and Suraj moved to her parents' home in Anchal. On May the 7th of 2020, Uthra's parents found her unresponsive in the bedroom, and she was later pronounced dead. It would emerge that the previous night, the 27-year-old had been bitten by a large Indian cobra while she was sleeping in the bedroom with her husband. The snake was found at the scene and destroyed. Uthra had previously informed loved ones that Suraj had developed an interest in snake handling. That aspect, coupled with the short time frame of her successive bites, immediately generated suspicions regarding her death and Suraj's possible involvement. Renowned snake expert Vava Suresh weighed in on both bite incidents and argued that the snakes had likely been introduced in the rooms. Suraj was arrested and in the aftermath publicly confessed to killing his wife, Chavarukavu. Suresh Kumar, the handler from whom he'd bought the viper and cobra, testified against him. Suraj admitted to starving the cobra for 11 days before releasing it on his wife, whom he'd previously drugged with sleep pills. His motive was to take ownership of Uthra's dowry in gold and of a life insurance policy, which he'd taken out in her name a few months before her death. It would emerge that gold was removed from Uthra's bank locker right after her first snake bite. Her father-in-law was arrested after investigators learned that he'd been complicit in the plot and that he'd buried 38 sovereigns of gold jewelry in a rubber plantation. Most of Uthra's dowry was never recovered. In 2021, Suraj was found guilty of using a cobra to murder his wife. Prosecutors demanded a death penalty, arguing that it was the rarest of rare cases, but Suraj was ultimately given 2 life sentences plus 17 years behind bars. Number 4. Alexis Crawford. In early November of 2019, Georgia student Alexis Crawford was reported missing by her family. On the 8th of the month, roughly a week after the report was filed, the 21-year-old's lifeless body was found in a DeKalb County park. The remains had been placed in a Rubbermaid bin and abandoned in a wooded area. Couple Baron Brantley and Jordan Jones, both aged 21, were arrested for Crawford's murder later in November. Jones and Crawford were both Clark Atlanta University students who'd previously shared an off-campus apartment. Crawford had contacted the authorities to report that Brantley had abused her at the residence on October the 27th. According to a police report, she, Jones, and Brantley had all been drinking at the apartment. Jones reportedly went to bed but then woke up to find Crawford locked in the bathroom with Brantley. As the latter emerged, he reportedly denied abusing the woman, even though Jones had never accused him of doing so. Jones then saw that Crawford was passed out in the bathroom, only wearing her bra. Crawford went to Grady Hospital the following day, got a specialized kit to check for abuse, and the sample was subsequently traced back to Brantley. In the days that followed the allegation, Jones snuck her boyfriend back into her room. On October the 31st, she and Crawford got into a physical altercation. As they were fighting, Brantley came out of the bedroom, charged Crawford, and began strangling her. While he was choking the young woman, Jones reportedly placed a bag over her head, further hindering her breathing. Once Crawford was dead, the couple disposed of her remains and went to a Halloween party together. Following their arrest, Brantley and Crawford both confessed to their roles in the murder in detail. However, they subsequently accused each other of being the main culprit and asked for their case to be severed so they could be tried separately. Their legal representatives also worked to have their previous confessions thrown out. As of the latest updates on the matter, the case was ongoing and a trial date hadn't been announced. Number 3. Zuko Carrasco. In 2015, Zuko Carrasco was coordinating a group activity during a corporate retreat in his native Ecuador. Carrasco, who had been a professional mountain guide for a decade, was taking part in a modified version of a trust fall exercise. Each participant was secured by a rope as they stepped off a 40-foot ledge. They were supposed to be caught by a partner handling the rope from below. Carrasco went last after all the others had successfully completed the exercise. The 34-year-old let himself go from the cliff, but his partner wasn't paying attention and didn't secure his descent. Carrasco plummeted to the ground, severely injuring his spinal cord. Looking back on the fall, he told the LA Times, "Instantly I stopped feeling my legs. I couldn't move my hands." He was left paralyzed from the waist down. In the years that followed, Carrasco felt angry at his partner for failing to catch him, but ultimately forgave him. He also refused to be limited by the loss of mobility and went on to perform impressive mountaineering feats. They included riding a modified hand cycle up Mount Kilimanjaro and scaling the 3,000-foot El Capitan Rock Formation in Yosemite, California. He completed the latter goal in October of 2023, aided by a team of 9 who rigged climbing ropes with a special pulley system. Carrasco painstakingly pulled himself to the top of the mountain, with his legs essentially being dead weight that further hindered his efforts by dragging across the steep rock face. Carrasco experienced dehydration and severe blisters before he reached the summit on October the 6th. While talking about overcoming the mental and physical challenges of the arduous climb, Carrasco told a media outlet, "What saved me was just being there and enjoying the view." Today's topic was requested by Borderline Betty 8180. If you have any other topics you'd like to learn about, subscribe and let us know in the comments section below. Number 2. Victims of Lexi Rose Crawford. In 2017, English teenager Dominic Risdon, aged 18, started talking to a girl in her mid-teens on Facebook and arranged a rendezvous. They met in April, and Risdon took her to secluded woodland in St. George, Bristol, reportedly telling her, "You are going to get laid." He then forced her to have relations with him. The girl reported the assault and Risdon was arrested. He admitted to having relations with someone who was not of the legal age of consent, and he was jailed for 4 years. Following his release on license, Risdon began identifying as female and changed his name to Lexi Rose Crawford. In the spring of 2019, she began talking to a woman on Facebook. In April, Crawford, who was at the time 20 years old, took a PlayStation to the woman's home to play video games. As they were sitting on a couch, Crawford tried to kiss the woman but was refused. She then sat on the floor and continued setting up the console. In the moments that followed, Crawford pulled the woman towards her and began removing her clothes. She then overpowered the victim and forced herself on her. Crawford was arrested but denied the attack, claiming she'd blacked out during the meetup and went to trial. In court, it was stated that Crawford had abused the victim with her manhood in spite of being told repeatedly to stop. Crawford's defense argued on the basis that she'd blacked out, adding that she'd been diagnosed with emotionally unstable personality disorder, autism, and gender dysphoria. The victim testified that she suffered from intense anxiety, flashbacks, and nightmares in the attack's wake, and that she had to move house. Her statement read, "After the incident, my trust in males diminished even more. My trust in people generally has been affected. Crawford was found guilty of abuse, resulting in a 9-year sentence, and of assault by penetration, for which she was sentenced to 6 years and 6 months. The sentences were to run concurrently and served in a prison for men, in line with government policy concerning transgender women offenders who had male genitalia and had committed crimes of abuse. Right after number 1, we will line up a previous episode that falls nicely in line with this one. Stick around if you have not yet seen our release about when peer pressure goes wrong. Number 1, Michelle Elliott.
I'm here to turn myself in.
Okay, what's going on?
I had an accident last night.
Okay.
I was showing an old friend of mine how to use this gun that she was needing, that she asked for, and it went off and it shot her in the chest.
Okay.
And I've been running around scared.
Where is this at?
On March the 26th of 2023, Brian Mason, aged 58, approached law enforcement officers outside of a police station in Miamisburg, Ohio. As shown on body cam footage, Mason told the officers that he was there to turn himself in. The man, who was wearing a blue shirt and carrying a water bottle, calmly confessed to a fatal shooting. Mason said, "I was showing an old friend of mine how to use this gun that she asked for, and it went off, and I shot her in the chest." Law enforcement arrested him before heading to the address in rural Union Township. They forced entry to the home of 57-year-old Michelle Elliott and found her sprawled on the floor in a pool of blood between her living room and kitchen. Law enforcement subsequently questioned Mason. He revealed that he'd been living in his car and helping the woman, whom he'd known since high school, with work at her home.
So you don't live on Soldier's Home anymore?
No, I do not.
Okay, I gotcha.
No, I've been, I was living in my truck, and then after my health started failing, and I couldn't keep a med card because my blood pressure was too high. Yeah, I quit and then took my savings and just been staying in rooms.
Were you staying at that house with her?
No.
Would she let you stay there? Or?
No, well, she offered, but because of her debilitating disease, I couldn't. It was too tough to be around her. It was too tough to be around her when she was drunk and high.
Elliott had reportedly told him that she was looking to get a new firearm because she felt unsafe. Mason showed her his .40 caliber pistol and accidentally shot her in the process. In the aftermath, he panicked, covered her body with a blanket, and fled in his pickup truck. He spent the night driving through Montgomery County and parked at various gas stations before he eventually turned himself in. Roughly 24 hours after the shooting, in the summer of 2024, Mason was convicted of reckless homicide and a weapons charge, resulting in a sentence of 8 years. In the early hours of June the 24th of 2022, Philadelphia man James "Simmy" Lambert Jr. was walking across Cecil B. Moore Avenue when he was ambushed by a group of teenagers. Without warning or provocation, harrowing surveillance footage from the attack showed Lambert initially trying to walk away from the group, which consisted of 3 females and 4 males in their early to mid-teens. One of them, later identified as Richard Jones, then grabbed a traffic cone, came up behind Lambert and struck him in the head. The 73-year-old man collapsed on the sidewalk. Emboldened by Jones's attack, another teen, Gamara Mosley, picked up the cone and threw it into Lambert as he curled up on the pavement. Lambert got up and staggered down the sidewalk, at which point Mosley chased after him with the cone, raised it above her shoulders and forcefully slammed it against his head. The teens were seen laughing and egging each other on throughout the clip. Lambert suffered devastating injuries to which he succumbed in a hospital the following day. The Philadelphia Police Department released the video, along with a $20,000 reward for information leading to the assailant's capture. Richard Jones and Gamara Mosley surrendered to the authorities in the aftermath. As of the latest available information on the case, they were charged as adults with third-degree murder and conspiracy. Number 6. Peyton Collier, William Bell, Ronnie Lang Jr. and Ashley Esselborn. 23-year-old Wichita Falls man Zachary Wood was murdered in May of 2022 in what Texas law enforcement described as a massive bloodletting event. The incident occurred at a time when Wood was at a Brown Street home with 27-year-old Peyton Collier and her boyfriend Ronnie Lang Jr. Also present were 21-year-old Ashley Esselborn and her boyfriend William Bell. A fight erupted on May the 21st after Collier and Esselborn, who at the time worked as a Hooters waitress, accused Wood of stealing drugs and money from them while they'd been sleeping. 18-year-old Lang led the group in a vicious attack on Wood that resulted in him being punched, stomped, and struck with a baseball bat and a handgun. The relentless pummeling resulted in Wood's death, and his body was found by the police responding to a welfare check at around noon on May the 21st. The group was arrested a few days later on charges of first-degree felony murder. During her police interviews, Esselborn denied taking part in a fatal beating but admitted that she'd cheered the others on as they were assaulting Wood, while demanding to know the whereabouts of her stolen property. She also confessed to helping dispose of bloodied items in the aftermath. Her stated degree of involvement was confirmed by Collier. As of December of 2022, Lang was given a 50-year sentence after pleading guilty to Wood's murder in September. Bell was bailed out while Collier remained jailed. Esselborn, whose bail had been reduced from $1 million to $100,000, asked a judge to further cut it down to $50,000, arguing that she'd be able to pay it from the money she'd made working as an OnlyFans model. Her request was denied. Number 5. Buffalo Kia Challenge. 4 American teenagers died in a car crash in late October of 2022, in an incident that the authorities reported was linked to a TikTok trend called the Kia Challenge. It consisted of viral videos teaching users how to break into Kia or Hyundai vehicles, remove the ignition cover, and then hotwire them using a USB cord and a screwdriver. Based on what they'd learned from the trend, a group of 6 teenagers stole a Kia Sportage in Buffalo, New York on October the 23rd. During the joyride, the vehicle violently crashed on Route 33. The driver, Julian Armstead, remained trapped inside the Kia as his 5 companions were forcefully ejected. Only one of the teens that had been launched into the street survived. After she was initially reported as being in critical condition, the deceased were identified as Marcus Webster, Swazine Swindle, Kevin Payne, and Ajani Harper, who'd recently become a mother. On December the 9th of 2022, a judge ruled that Armstead would remain in adult court for charges that included 4 counts of manslaughter in the 2nd degree, 1 count of assault in the 1st degree, and 1 count of criminal possession of stolen property. Number 4. Shania McNeil. Australian woman Shania McNeil was driving from a club in Sydney's Western, heading to a friend's house about a half an hour past midnight on April the 28th of 2019. McNeil's friends, Hazel Wildman and Fader Hunter, were passengers in her pink Suzuki and had recorded her on Snapchat while she was purposefully driving on the wrong side of the road. As music was blaring in the car, the disturbing video showed them seemingly encouraging 21-year-old McNeil as she was playing chicken with oncoming cars. It would later be determined that McNeil was 2 times over the alcohol limit while also having MDMA and cannabis in her system. At around 1:10 a.m., while driving recklessly through Berkshire Park, she crashed head-on into a Nissan Micra. The collision obliterated the front sides of both vehicles, and McNeil suffered massive internal injuries. She died before paramedics arrived at the scene. Inside the Micra were musicians Dennis Sales and Ken Morrow, who'd been driving home from a gig at Riverstone RSL. Bystanders pulled them from the wreck along with the Suzuki's occupants. Morrow was later released with a shattered wrist, while Sales, a father of 3, was placed in a coma for 2 days but eventually recovered. Wildman and Hunter were heavily criticized for sharing a selfie from the hospital that showed them wearing neck braces after their friend had just died. In a subsequent interview, the women, both in their early 20s at the time, denied knowing that McNeil had succumbed to her injuries at the time of uploading the photo. Wildman told a media outlet, "She just looked like she was sleeping and happy sleeping. She looked beautiful on the outside." In the same interview, Hunter admitted that they'd encouraged McNeil before it started to get scary. Number 3. Sarah Platt. British teenager Sarah Platt and her friends tried the Skull Breaker Challenge, a trend popularized on TikTok in February of 2020. It involved 3 people jumping in a line with those on each side kicking the legs out from the person in the middle, thus causing them to fall on their back. The momentum typically resulted in the back of their head whipping back into the surface on which they landed. Platt would later remember that she initially didn't want to take part in the stunt, fearing she'd get hurt, but eventually gave in to peer pressure while at a sporting event with her friends. As they kicked Platt's legs out, She landed awkwardly on her neck and soon started losing feeling in her right leg. She was rushed to the hospital where doctors found that she'd broken 3 bones in her neck and her T5 vertebrae. Platt's mother shared footage of the moment when the injury occurred, as well as a photo of her daughter lying flat with a brace on her head and neck as a warning to other parents. A few years after the injury in the summer of 2022, Platt herself urged others not to try viral challenges. Although the 18-year-old had largely overcome the mobility issues stemming from her injury, she reported that she still suffered complications. One of them was in the form of postural tachycardia syndrome, which caused her to faint. Number 2. Ashley Hughes. While at his residence at the University of Lincoln in December of 2014, English teenager Ashley Hughes decided to experiment with MDMA. The freshman was 13 weeks into his studies after leaving his family home near Stockport in Cheshire. As reported by his mother, Hughes didn't drink or smoke and was innocent-minded. She reportedly read messages from the 19-year-old's phone, in his own words, saying that he was being peer-pressured into trying drugs. Hughes and his friend 19-year-old Luke Green pooled their cash along with another unnamed student. Green then bought 8 pills from fellow freshman Reese Bilal, who in turn was supplied by final-year student Hayden Watson, aged 21. By all accounts, Hughes was very inexperienced with drugs. On the evening of December the 16th, he took 2 pills at once, unaware that they had a purity of 40%, meaning they were roughly twice as strong as the drugs typically found on the street. A few hours later, he started overheating and displaying signs of distress. Friends took him outside and tried to lower his temperature with cold showers. In the early hours of December the 17th, Hughes collapsed in the shower. He was taken to the county hospital, but doctors were unable to save him, with the cause of death subsequently listed as overdose. Green, Bilal, and Watson were labeled monsters by Hughes's mother in the aftermath for what she'd perceived as them preying on her son. They were given sentences ranging from 12 months to 3 years after they'd each admitted to being involved in procuring the fatal MDMA. Number 1. Sean Mullen. In the fall of 2022, English businessman Sean Mullen, aged 49, travelled for work to Burton-upon-Trent in Staffordshire. After he'd gone out for dinner and drinks with his colleagues, on September the 23rd, Mullen headed back to his hotel but got lost after taking a wrong turn. At around 2:30 a.m., he spotted a group of youths in a car park off the high street and asked them for directions. One from the group, which reportedly consisted of 3 young men and 3 young women, came at Mullen from behind and floored him with a powerful blow. After the father of 2 had collapsed, the others joined in the attack and proceeded to repeatedly stomp and kick him in the head until he became unconscious. They then left him for dead and drove off. Although he'd been badly hurt, Mullen was able to regain his composure enough to reach his colleagues, who then rushed him to the hospital. Among other injuries, Mullen's jaw, eye socket and cheekbone had been shattered. The York man needed reconstructive surgery in the form of pins and metal plates inserted in his face to mend the damage. As for his mental state, Mullen's wife reported that the brutal beating had left him a broken man. He wouldn't leave the house, had flashbacks, was scared of noises, and flinched whenever someone touched him, including his children. Mullen decided to share his story in October of 2022, hoping that it would help the authorities find his attackers. Thanks for watching. Would you rather invest all your money in cryptocurrency or spend every dime you have on lottery tickets? Let us know in the comments section below.